This is Kari Kampakis, and you're listening to the Girl Mom Podcast. Today's show is a topic that every parent faces at some point, and that is watching your child get left out. It's impossible for everybody to be invited all the time, and as parents, we do our kids a big favor when we teach them how to handle this reality and respond to this reality in a way that won't hurt their friendships or make them look bad. In my 20 years of raising girls, I have seen time and time again that how well a girl navigates being left out is largely determined by how well her mom handles her being left out. There's a way to be wise and a way to be foolish, and the worst thing we can do is to 1, immediately call someone and give them a piece of our mind, 2, throw whoever left our child out under the bus and start gossiping about them, or 3, jump in and try to micromanage or control a situation that we just need to let play out on its own. Now, I understand firsthand that social media adds a whole new dimension to being left out. I've been at home with a child who is suddenly upset because she sees her friends together without her. It stinks, and even for us grown-ups, it hurts. We've all experienced that feeling of rejection and question ourselves and our friendships as a result. We also need safe people we can talk to or vent to when this happens, along with empathy and compassion for our children when they experience the sting. But we don't have to stay stuck in that dark place of self-pity. We can acknowledge the pain, feel it, process it, and then try to move forward. I'm thankful to have my very wise friend, Kim Anderson, a Nashville counselor, back on the show to share tips and strategies that we can employ to help our daughters and sons not only survive moments of rejection, but also grow stronger and more resilient as a result. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen and share this episode with friends. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, Kim. It is always a joy to have you back on the Girl Mom Podcast.
Thanks, Kari. I always love being here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, this is one of the topics that we knew we needed to cover because I think we're hearing more and more about it in our respective work. I hear moms say it all the time, I got left out when I was younger, but I didn't know about it. I didn't see everything online.
Thank goodness.
I know, exactly. And so it is hard. And these kids don't have the experience and the emotional maturity, to always know how to handle it. So what you and I have done for today's episode is we've come up with 5 strategies to help moms when their child gets left out. To not only help their child regulate their emotions, but also to help us as moms regulate our emotions too. So our first strategy, the first thing that I think that we can do as moms to prepare our kids for these situations is just to know up front that nobody gets invited to everything. And you don't have the capacity or enough time in the day to be great friends with everybody and to go to every party that you're invited to.
Absolutely. For every party that you're not invited to, there's just another invitation around the corner. But we can get so caught up in this feeling of rejection, this feeling of exclusion, that we get panicky. And we get panicky ourselves as moms when we watch our kids hurt and not know what happened. Why weren't they invited? And trying to figure out what's going on. But we have to have realistic expectations of what we can all accommodate as far as friendships go. There's not enough time in the day for everybody to have deep friendships with large amounts of people.
Right. And, even Jesus had 12 disciples. He was friends with everybody, but he had his core group. Mm-hmm. So, we're all going to have people that we're closer with. And just as I, can't get upset if I go out to dinner and I see 3 moms that I know having drinks or having dinner and they didn't invite me,
Yeah.
If we get that offended every time we see people together, that's just a life skill. Now, granted, it's different if they're an acquaintance versus if those are 3 good friends of yours. But, sometimes what we don't realize or what our kids don't realize is that, okay, they see their friends eating pizza together without them. What could have happened were these friends were all little sisters of the baseball team, and they were all at the ballpark together, and then their families were like, let's go get pizza together. So many things happen just because you're doing something with somebody or you're in the same place or you're in the same organization and something social happens as a result of that. Mm-hmm. There's so many times that there's more to the story than what you see. And so I think that's something that it's really good to teach our children about that sometimes it's not that anybody intentionally left you out, but just they were together for whatever reason, and this might have happened naturally.
Absolutely. I always tell my kids there's always a backstory, right?
Yes.
That we don't know about, that explains why they all gathered together.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids don't reference the backstory when they're posting on Instagram that they're all grabbing pizza together, right? And they're tagging each other,
Right.
and someone's left out. And so we have to, again, navigate it with our kids that this is just how life is. I heard a statistic one time that said we can each have a capacity, or we have the capacity for about 5 good friends.
That's good.
Right? Like
That's
5
so good.
really good friends that are kind of
Yes.
our inner circle people. And beyond that, there's not enough time in the day.
Right.
And so if we're looking to other people to include us, but we're not getting included, we might not be one of their closest 5 friends, and that's okay.
Right. And that's good to know. It just tells you that's not the relationship you need to go pour all your time into.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why I see a lot of unhappiness in friendships today, is because either people are trying to spread themselves too thin, or they're investing in relationships where the person is not reciprocating. And like you said, you don't need, I always say it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. You would rather have 4 good quality friends than, several half friends that you really can't count on. And that, if you miss 2 weeks of school, they don't even notice. Those aren't the friends who are really, the people in your corner who are going to have your back. So I think that's a great thing. And just knowing up front, like I said, that not everybody gets invited to everything, and that's okay. And we can model that as moms and even share examples from our life. No, a bunch of moms were invited to this, and I wasn't invited. But it's okay. For every invitation you don't get, there's another invitation around the corner. The second thing, and I think this is so big, and you probably see a lot of this just doing the work that you do as a counselor, is to not act on knee-jerk reactions, because 9 times out of 10, our first reaction is not our best reaction. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're living in a world, and social media doesn't help it, that we don't take time to pray and cool off and, just calm down. And even myself, sometimes I want to call a friend before I just stop and talk to God about it, And I'm like, usually if we pray about it first, then at least it'll put us in a better headspace to be able to go call a friend about it. But sometimes we just don't want to do that. We just want to go air our grievances or complain or gossip about somebody or go make that phone call or send that angry email or do something that we'll regret.
Well, what we want to model for our kids is emotional intelligence. So the emotions are fine. We want to name the emotions, but we don't want the emotions to own us, right? We don't want to get on a roller coaster and start riding up and down simply because we're misunderstanding a situation. It's like that window of tolerance we've talked about so many times on your podcast, where when we're out of our window of tolerance, which is where we really can live in the fruits of the Spirit, and we're up in that hyper-aroused place where we're in panic and our brain's going, oh no, something bad's going to happen, we're not equipped to communicate with other people. Right? We need to get back into our window of tolerance before we lean into hard conversations.
Yes.
And that takes about 20 minutes.
Oh, does it?
So
okay. To come from hyper-arousal to back into your window of tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it helps to have things, like breathing exercises or going for a walk or listening to music that's relaxing. But never, the knee-jerk reactions happen when we are trying to solve things when we're out of our window of tolerance, which is never going to work out for us.
That's so good. And I saw a quote recently from Adam Grant, who I love his way of thinking and his writing. But he wrote, a sign of emotional intelligence is moving from you made me feel to this is how I reacted. Our emotions aren't caused by other people's actions. They're shaped by our interpretations. Blaming others gives them power over our feelings. Taking responsibility empowers us. I love that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if I were to name, and I think this is the issue, that I'm seeing with a lot of girls today too, and that we're facing in parenting, sometimes it's not just the circumstances, it's the way we're interpreting the world. And I read something, it was before COVID, I thought was so interesting, and it said how, today's teenagers are more stressed, and this is before COVID, more stressed and more depressed than teenagers who lived through World War II and the Great Depression. Yeah. And historically, they said usually depression and major mental health issues were caused by events. So you could point back to an event that caused it, like the Depression. But now these mental illnesses and these things that we're struggling with, they're often caused by the way we interpret the world.
It's the story, the narrative that we tell ourselves when we look at the picture and see that we're left out.
Right. And so I think as parents, that it can be our superpower if we get ourselves in a healthy place, which is why you do the work that you do. Because if you help a mom get strong, you help that whole family get strong.
Yes.
And I just want to encourage moms, sometimes I've learned this just writing books for moms and teenage girls, that we're so quick to do something that will help our daughter or do something that will help our relationship with our daughter. But we don't want to do things that help ourselves. And it's really hard for us to look at ourselves because I think we don't want to admit that we're not perfect, and we are so scared to fail at motherhood. And we just have to get comfortable with the fact that we always have something to learn. We do fail, and that's why we need Jesus. And it's okay. It's okay to say, oh, I made a mistake there, but I know better now, and I'm going to do better moving forward. And for our children to see that. But just knowing that emotional regulation and learning how to react better to situations is a prime opportunity to teach our daughters and our sons, how to react to their disappointments in a way that they're not a bull in a china shop, just, ruining relationships by the way that they're responding to certain events.
Well, taking care of ourselves is loving our children well. That's how
good.
We love our children well.
Yes, I love that. Okay, and this our third point goes with that point too. The third way we can help our children when they get left out and they're having that emotional roller coaster is to stop first and notice what's going on inside of us. Let's talk a little bit about that, since that's really what you do as a counselor.
Yeah, well, it's understandable. When our kids hurt, we hurt, right? They're an extension of us, and it's so easy to quickly react to the pain that we're feeling because our kids are feeling pain, right? So texting the mom of the child that was the excluder and letting them know how hurtful their child was. Those knee-jerk reactions don't serve us, but we're doing it because we want answers, we want to fix it, we want to solve it.
Yes.
And our kids do need us to be regulated. They need us to be in control of our emotions so that they can be regulated. And it makes me think of a mom that I know who her daughter was left out of a hangout, right? A group hangout. And the mom saw that these girls were all hanging out on her Instagram, and the daughter really wasn't paying attention, and the daughter didn't feel super close to these girls and wasn't actually that hurt by it, right? And the mom went to the daughter and said, "Can you believe these girls are hanging out without you? How do you feel about this? Doesn't this make you sad that these girls are hanging out?"
No.
And so that's a great example, right? Where that was the mom's problem, not the daughter's problem. So anytime we're too invested in our kids' experiences or their social, the social media world that they're in, then it's a sign that we need to do our own work and we need to figure out what we need to heal in order to be able to regulate our emotions when it comes to exclusion.
I've always thought that. I'm like, if I'm ever more upset over an event than my daughter is over the same event in her life, then something is wrong. Yeah. And that is when we have to look at ourselves to help our children.
Well, and our kids need us to be an anchor, right? They need to look at us. We've talked about this as well. They need us to be the bigger, stronger, kinder, and wiser parent.
Right.
And so when we're dysregulated because of their exclusion, then we can't be that anchor for them saying, hey, you can handle hard things. What do we want to do? Do we want to go to the movies tonight? Do we want to go get our nails done? Hey, let's go get ice cream, right?
Right.
This too will pass. This is part of life. We're still excluded as moms, right?
Right.
But you can handle this. We're with you, and it's going to be okay.
Yes, that's so true. And, and we hear this all the time, that everybody wants to be close to their teenagers. And that is a season of life where a division can happen because they are, naturally pulling back. Their world is expanding. They're looking more to their friends and they're growing. And the key way, they don't need us anymore. Of course, they love it for when we make their breakfast or make their lunch, but they don't need us in so many of the ways that they needed us when they were younger. But if we really want to connect with our teenagers and our young adults and our kids as they leave home, the best thing we can do is to be a wise mentor.
Yes.
I mean, that's something they're going to need their whole life long. Yep. I say it all the time. I still call my dad all the time. He is almost 88 years old, but I still need advice. And I can appreciate his wisdom even more now. That's something that at whatever age our kids are, they still need from us. But if we're acting on knee-jerk reactions or we haven't dealt with our baggage, we're not going to be able to guide them well. And they're going to go to somebody else. And so for me, I'm like, that's motivation to get ourselves in a good place as parents, that we can be that person that they want to call or that home they want to come home to. But that's not going to happen if we don't deal with our own stuff. And that's a whole other conversation that we've got to have so much grace for ourselves as moms. And you've said before that I think, what's the statistic? That we only have to get it right 30% of the time.
Isn't that great news? Everybody can pop a champagne bottle right now.
Yes, yeah. And I think I see a lot of young moms that just are such perfectionists, and I was the same way. But when you've been parenting for 20 years, like you and I have, we've made, you're not a perfectionist anymore because you've made so many mistakes. And then there are so many things that like, I could have done that better, but actually God worked with that situation. He filled in the gap and it turned out okay. And that's where you realize why we need our faith and why we need Jesus, that He really can work with our mistakes and our failures and what we didn't know at the time. And we don't have to keep beating ourselves up over that.
100%.
Okay. And then the fourth way to help our children when they feel left out is to be curious about and to reflect on and work on our own triggers, which again is what you specialize in.
Yeah, I mean, when our kids get left out, it triggers our old wounds. We can instantly go back, all of us can, to a memory where we felt uninvited. And thank goodness we did not have social media so that it was in our face 24/7. What these kids are up against is really just so difficult. Exclusion is so painful whenever we experience it. And it's just this sting that's coming and it catches us off guard. And so the best thing that we can do to love our girls well is to heal those open wounds in our nervous system, right? We can't control what happens outside of our house, but we can control what happens inside. And that's the most important thing, is that we are doing what our kids need for us to be safe parents.
Yes, that's perfect. Yes. And I think that, by us taking that route and taking the higher road, you're not only modeling for your child, but you're also giving them that safety net. I have a mom that told me a few years ago, it was Halloween night, that her daughter was having some issues with a friend group, and she thought they were going to all dress up together, but they're like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And so anyway, so she was like, don't worry, you can just stay home with us. We'll have a great, Halloween night here together as a family. And anyway, she was like, we had gone to the neighbor's house for 5 minutes, and during that 5-minute period, her friends came, and they were all dressed up together and had blatantly left her out. And she just did her best to hold it together. And then they left. And as soon as her parents got home, she just burst into tears. Mm-hmm. And so those are the moments that can really bring out your mama bear, because that is like deliberately being mean, you know. But I think this mom handled it so well. She's like, I just had to go calm myself down, be the strongest person in the room. And she's like, you know what? I was just determined to make this a fun Halloween. So I invited, my sister came over, my mom came over. We just had a family gathering. They brought laughter and joy into the home. And it just goes back to the fact we can't control what's happening outside our house, but we can control the joy we bring into our home. And I think that's key in these moments. It's not only a distraction for our child, but just helping, like that's anything in life. Like if we're going through a hard time, it's just you're somebody at home making you laugh, or, it's those close relationships that get you through a trial, whether it's rejection or something else. Yeah. That's so important.
And paying attention to the narrative that we're telling ourselves. Like we said earlier, it's so easy to make up stories and fill in the gaps. That's what our brain wants to do. It wants to fill in the gap because it wants to be certain about things.
Right.
And so we're really quick to fill in gaps. And so as parents, if we can just parent out of wisdom, not out of our wounds, and make sure that we're there, again, just as that safe, secure base for them to be able to share their pain without them triggering our dysregulation.
Yes. And when it comes to those conversations, I think one thing that we can do as moms too is project into the future. Like, if something happens, oh, nobody likes me, nobody likes my kids, they're not going to have any friends, we won't have anybody to go on a senior trip with. It's like we can take these worries, and that's the enemy. That is not from God. That is the enemy getting into our head and causing us to panic. And that's not how we're called to live.
No.
And then the fifth and last way we can help our children when they get left out is something that we really can do before anything ever happens. And that is just teaching them to plant lots of seeds in their friendships. And my big piece of advice, I share this in every talk that I give, and I always share it with my daughters, is cast a wide net by being kind to everybody. And I've written about this before, but I see so many girls especially that really paint themselves into a corner because they find their people or they find their friend group and they're kind to them, but they really don't make connections or really talk to anybody beyond their friend group because they're so happy. And what happens is when something happens in that friend group, whether it blows up or somebody new comes in or somebody says, let's leave her out, all of a sudden she has nowhere to go. And then nobody will take her in because they were cliquey and exclusive to begin with. And so I just think, that's these seeds that you plant in other relationships. That can be, it might just be nice to have on most days, but on a really dark day, that could be your saving grace for your daughter, is that she does have those other friends. And by that, it could be friends from church, friends from the gym where she practices, friends on her basketball travel team, just always encouraging them to keep making friends and to keep making these connections. And that way they don't have all of their eggs in one basket of one certain friend group.
Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back to, again, setting those expectations like we talked about in point 1 is these things are going to happen. And so how do you proactively invest in relationships outside of your specific group at school? So that like you said, when hard times come, when you get excluded, it doesn't feel so catastrophic.
Yes, exactly. I just think that, and sometimes that just leads to some of the sweetest new friendships. And I talk to so many girls and moms too. I know so many moms that they're like, that's actually when I became friends with my best friend because I got left out of my friend group or something blew up there. And she's the one who came over and sat by me. And that started a new friendship.
Yes.
And then really just summing all of this up, in some situations, and sometimes our kids get left out and it's not something that they would have expected to be invited to or that they should expect to be invited to. It would have been nice, but it's not their closest group of friends. But sometimes it is a close friend and maybe they do feel blatantly excluded. So let's talk for a minute about how do we coach our daughters if she feels like she needs to have a conversation with the person who hurt her feelings. Instead of us getting involved as moms, how do we coach our daughters to prepare for that conversation? And approach that person who hurt her in a way that's not going to make her get defensive or shut down or just lock her out, but that actually might lead to some conflict resolution and some healing for their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is something that I think, depending on the age and the maturity of your child, it's really great to teach them how to handle it. And my favorite go-to strategy is just leaning in saying, hey, am I missing something? Hey, I noticed that you guys were all hanging out together. Am I missing something? And that's a lot of times where the backstory comes out. Oh, actually, yes, we were all at our brother's baseball games, and then our families went to pizza, and so we took some pictures together. That's why we didn't include you. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, now the curtain's pulled back, and it doesn't feel so overwhelming or so painful. Now, on the flip side, if you're dealing with mean girls, they might actually tell you, yeah, we don't want to be your friend anymore. And,
right.
And those are hard times. But the good thing about that, the blessing in that, is that you are now able to help your daughter navigate what safe friends look like and how to move to a safe friend group and away from a toxic friend group, because those aren't girls that they want to be hanging out with anyway.
Right. And I think the sooner, if a friend group or a friend is not good for you, if they are toxic, the sooner you can get out, the better. Because, I talk to adults and they're like, I don't have any good friends from high school because they were all mean. I was in a mean crowd. And those are not the relationships that are typically, if they do last a long time, they're not going to be healthy. I mean, they're not the long-term relationships that you want. So it really is a blessing, even if it leads to a lonely period, because that way, sometimes it's better to get that reset and to move forward, being smarter and knowing what you want and the kind of friend you want to be.
And I think I just want to add too, I think sometimes as moms, we can find ourselves in a little bit of a predicament where we're good friends as parents.
Yes.
And then our daughters are also friends, but then one friend is leaving the other friend out, and that can get hard. And so I just encourage, moms to be able to lean into that conversation too and have low expectations about how your relationship is going to go through middle school, through high school, because that can change and shift. And if we expect we're going to be best friends and they're going to be best friends and we're going to have all of these wonderful trips together from kindergarten to high school, we're going to be disappointed at some point because it's likely not going to happen that way.
Yes. And you share really quickly. I love what you said, that I think you told me once that you met your best friends and when your son was in 6th grade because all the boys were friends. But you preempted that conversation. What did y'all talk about?
Yeah, we normalized that, hey, we've all got boys in the same grade, but things are going to shift and change, and they're going to have different interests in different classes and different sports and different friends, and that has to be okay, right? And so we've stayed together as a group of friends as moms with the expectation that our boys didn't have to, and that was okay.
And so did they go into different friend groups? And then did you say they came back together senior year?
But they still stayed kind
they're
of
friendly.
they're friendly, right?
Yes.
But there's no expectation
Yes.
put on them.
Yes,
And so
which is
it's
huge.
like when we come together, it's just kind of, almost like family coming together, and it's manageable.
Yes. I think that's huge. And I really encourage the younger moms to do that because I get a lot of emails about that and I've written about it too. And it always gets a huge response. Don't let your mom friendships depend on your children's friendships. Our friendships should be based on something bigger than that.
Yeah.
Because what happens a lot of times, it was like your best friend from college or you've been friends for 30 years and your girls are great friends when they're little and it's easy to get along with a lot of people. And then the girls get older and they have different interests or one doesn't like the other one as much as they used to. And so the girls in their friendships, and then a lot of times the moms in their friendships.
Yes.
And, I've seen this with my girls that, when they're little, you're thinking, oh, this is so perfect. We're all friends. We take trips together. They're going to be college roommates, blah, blah, blah. And then the girls drift apart. And a lot of times there's not bad blood. It's just they don't have as much in common. And I will say this, having older girls, this has happened several times that they came back together and became great friends again as they got older and especially as they graduated. And I'm thinking, I am so happy I didn't burn that bridge with that mom because one, I could have prevented these girls from coming back together. One of them, we did senior trip with her and her mom and it was so sweet. And on that trip, the mom and I were like, we are just so happy they found each other again. And I think now it is going to be a lifelong friendship. It's going to be what I dreamed of originally, but there was a gap. There was a 6-year gap in there and I had to come to peace with that. And I'm so thankful that I didn't try to get involved or try to force them to go back to this friendship because I could have prevented that future event from happening by getting too involved when they did drift.
Yeah. We have to hold friendships loosely and cherish the ones that are close, but hold the rest of them loosely. And we cannot social engineer our children's lives.
No.
We just can't.
No.
It doesn't serve anybody and it will backfire.
Yeah. And I do. I have a friend who's a counselor at a high school and she counsels girls and that's what she sees a lot of times. She's like, a lot of the drama I see is because these girls have been forced into friendships by their moms because the moms have a history and they have a friendship. And she's like, on their own volition, they probably would not be in these friendships together still, but their parents are still trying to force it. And so I'm not saying that this gives, somebody's child the liberty to go treat your child like dirt, and I'm not justifying somebody being mean to your child or your child doing it to your friend's best daughter. But I think what we do have to realize as moms is I think as moms can get so upset, like I would never let my daughter treat somebody else's daughter like that. But the fact is nobody knows what their child is doing. And you don't know what kind of coaching your friend might be coaching her daughter well at home. She might be telling her to be kind, even if you're not as close. And her daughter's just not listening. And you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And the mom can't always tell you that. And so I think as moms, this is why we need our faith. And you just have to be able to, like I said, yes, you might not be as close to that friend whose daughter's not treating your daughter well, but you can still be friendly enough. I still would not burn that bridge because, like I said, the girls might come back together in 10 years. And then what's going to happen when you have ruined your mom friendship and they're back together?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, well, just to wrap up here, I think what we can remind our girls, at the end of the day, like you said, they can handle hard things. We can be that safe place where they can process that emotions without getting on that roller coaster with them. For us to stay on that platform, like you say, that, when they get off that emotional roller coaster, to be standing there on that platform with our arms wide open, waiting for them when they're ready to get off. And just to give that stability and that consistency to them, that they know they have that anchor that they can always count on and that they can look to us for strength. And that also, these lonely seasons can be a great opportunity for us to grow our relationship with our children, whether it's our son or our daughter, by spending more time together and going to see the grandparents and doing these things. So moms, just be encouraged. Today is just one chapter in your child's story. It's not the end of your daughter's story, the end of your son's story. And you never know how God is going to work behind the scenes to heal a relationship or restore a relationship or bring new friendships into your child's life. So just trust and pray and just try not to act on those knee-jerk reactions and just really try to lean into your faith in these moments and just trust God to carry your daughter or your son through them. Kim, thank you so much for coming back on this show. I think this is a really important topic and one we could probably go back and revisit again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I love being here.
Friends, thank you for tuning in today. I am so grateful to have you here. And if you enjoyed this show, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave a ratings or review so that other people can find these messages too. For links to my books, my social media, and my new community on Substack, check out the show links. Thanks again for your support, and have a great day.